Hi, we're the Singh Twins and we're here at Firstsite in our exhibition, Slaves of Fashion, which runs until 11th of September 2022. The exhibition is all about the history of empire, and it's really looking at that story through the lens of historical trade in textiles, India's trade in textiles. Lots of narratives around conflict and conquest, consumerism and slavery, and how that links into the modern world. The Slaves of Fashion exhibition contains a lot of material for visitors to see. Large-scale portraits, digital backlit fabric artworks. Others are hand-painted artworks, and then to complement that in the outer gallery spaces, there's a range of material which actually will give visitors an insight into how this exhibition and the artworks were put together, including time lapses where you can actually see step-by-step creation of various illustrations, paintings, drawings, and digital work. There's also an app which people can engage with further along inside the main galleries, and a couple of artist films which will really give people an insight into the very complex narratives that we explore through each of the artworks here. This artwork called Indiennes, the Extended Triangle, really sums up what Slaves of Fashion is about. It looks at the core themes of the show, which is looking at the relationship between trade and slavery and consumerism. It was really the starting point of this whole exhibition, and how it came about is that my sister and I were in France and we came across some textiles which to us looked African in origin. There were actually these textiles represented in the artwork here, which have little African huts and elephants and rhinos as part of the patterning. The curator actually explained to us that these were not African textiles. They were in fact produced in India. And they were produced in the 17th century for the African market, and French merchants had commissioned these pieces especially to exchange for African slaves. Now, that was quite a surprise to us because I think, like many people, we think of the transatlantic slave trade as this very defined triangle, this trade relationship between the UK, Africa and the Americas. And here we had these textiles that were really pointing to a different side of that story. And for us, it was making a very strong connection between India, where the textiles were produced, and that whole trade in slaves within Africa. So that got us fired up to really look more into that particular subject. And the more we delved into that, the more we realised that actually the history of slavery and empire is a global story. And this exhibition really reflects that. It's an exhibition that's for many different communities, because empire and colonialism and all the conflict and the exploitation that went with that literally affected every nation on the world at that time. So the artworks are very, very complex, and as you can see, there are so many details, and every detail has a meaning. Every single thing tells a story. So for example, this detail here shows a pot which would have contained palm oil. And it's from the 19th century and from a company called Lever Brothers. Lord Leverhulme in Port Sunlight on the Wirral near Liverpool produced palm oil, and he had a connection with the Congo, where of course indentured labour and slave labour was used to produce the palm oil. Now, many of the works have historical content, but in the show there are also other artworks that make contemporary responses to those historical contexts and show how a lot of what happened in the empire and colonial days is actually still relevant today. So, for example, taking this palm oil pot, we wanted to look more into the production of palm oil today and the practices of trading in palm oil today. So the work that's shown alongside the historical piece, if you like, is this piece here, which is called Because You're Worth It, ? And it's looking at the cultivation of palm oil. You've got the elephant that's made up of various products that contain palm oil, everyday consumer products from ice cream to Coca-Cola to donuts. Riding the back of this elephant, you have Death, who is killing the wildlife, in this case the orangutans, that are really the kind of forefront of the animals that are suffering because of palm oil production today. And he's shooting them with an arrow, which the tip of the arrow is actually a palm oil pod or seed. So Slaves of Fashion exhibition has grown in the last 2 years. We've added quite a few new artworks since it first showed in 2018. And this is one of the last works that has been added. Again, it's looking at a contemporary relevance to history, particularly in the light of the murder of George Floyd. It was our immediate reaction to that event. There's lots of details in this artwork which link racism in America today with its historical roots in the transatlantic slave trade. Many of those details can be seen in the bottom half of the artwork and by some of the figures that are standing around the composition. But with this work, as with all of the works in the Slaves of Fashion exhibition, what we'd really like visitors to do is engage with these histories and really have a better understanding of how much we're all connected through that imperial legacy, not just in the past histories that we share, but also in the way that those histories have impacted on us all today, not least through the sort of colonial mindsets and attitudes that we've carried on through the generations to the present day.